Greetings, DAV. It is a rare moment when DAV asks our members and supporters to go check something out, and especially a book. But today's guest is an incredible person. This is no ordinary book, no ordinary person that we're talking to. Today's guest is a dedicated DAV member whose new hardcover, War of Fear, Eye of the Nomad, is not only a great and informative and entertaining work, but it's one that supports DAV in a very special way. The book has something for everyone. It takes place at a historic time, showcases the first true special forces in world history. There's combat, epic adventure, romance, revenge, redemption, everything that veterans love. Joining us is the author, Umberto Nardolicci, a disabled United States Navy veteran and honored DAV Sporto. Nardo, thanks for being here. Congratulations on completing the first in what is going to be an awesome series of books. Tell us about Eye of the Nomad.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate that. Eye of the Nomad is a story of one of Genghis Khan's generals. And the concept is that obviously, building one of the largest empires in the world isn't done alone. It's done with a lot of other people. I mean, any great accomplishment has other people. Even though there might be one dominant person, there's usually they get help, if you will. And so the concept is that this is one of his generals, and Yasote is the main character, and he's my protagonist. He helped Genghis build his special forces group, which is called the Mango Day. And the Mango Day were responsible for doing PSYOPs operations, some of the first PSYOPs operations ever in history. And so that was the reason why I picked that character. I thought it was would make for a very entertaining storyline, something that a lot of people don't know a lot about. 12th, 13th century Far East Mongolia, China, sort of a unique place in history and a unique time in history. And that's basically the premise of the story.
You're a Navy veteran. You're a disabled veteran, changed in service. What was your inspiration to write War of Fear?
Actually, it's sort of funny because one of my buddies in the Navy, he was big into the martial arts, and I had not really been exposed to any type of structured martial arts programs ever. And he started, and he was my roommate. We both rented an apartment together while we were on board USS Saratoga. And he started teaching me because he was a black belt, and he had been doing exercises in this, been doing it for a long time. And so I started to get into it from his encouragement, and he saw that I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And one of the things he pointed out to me, he's like, if you're really interested in this, you ought to check out some of the Eastern philosophies. Well, I mean, I'd been through high school, but we didn't really go much into Eastern philosophies. I mean, as far as Lao Tzu and Confucius, and that was all sort of new to me. And he, and his point that's the martial arts is the tip of the iceberg. The interesting part of the martial arts is really the Eastern philosophies, and you ought to look into that. And that started me on a 40-year journey, if you will. Researching all the major thinkers from back in the day, and I found it just to be interesting. And I came across an article in an armed forces journal, actually, that was specifically addressing special forces, and one of the first special forces groups ever, which was the Mango Day from Genghis Khan's army. And I just found this whole story of Yasote very fascinating. I did a lot of research on it. I wasn't able to come up with a lot. There's not really a lot out there. And, well, the main reason is because the culture didn't even have a written word back then. So it was actually Genghis Khan commissioned a group to come up with the Mongolian written word. And the first work that ever been produced was produced after his death. So we're talking about a large group of illiterate people that grew into this massive empire. It's the largest contiguous empire ever So it's pretty impressive what they were able to accomplish. And so yeah, that's where the impetus came from my military experience with with the martial arts and with the Eastern philosophies.
Hey, tell us more about Yasute. What drives him? Like, what makes him relatable? And do you think that there's something about him that reflects challenges that people face today?
I do, and I think that one of the biggest challenges we face today is knowledge wielded without wisdom, and it can be dangerous. And I think we're seeing that now with some of the concerns that we have with some of the newer technologies with AI and so forth. And the story of Yasute is about a learned man that goes to this group of illiterate nomads, and he helps them. And he helps them in war tactics and strategy and planning and so forth. And he brings more of structure to the operation, if you will. And that's sort of the premise behind the book itself, is that he then after he helps create this war machine, learns to regret it and grows to regret it. And that's pretty much that's going to be the theme that carries on throughout the 3 books of the trilogy. The first book, Eye of the Nomad, introduces you to the protagonist, antagonist, and sort of sets the stage, if you will, for the upcoming storyline. It really covers a long period of time, 60 years. So, surprisingly, Genghis Khan lived to a very old age. And so did my main character, Yasute. And so that's sort of the where that's going to go with Yasute.
One of the illiterate people you were talking about is central to the story with Yasute. How did you kind of put them together? What dynamic? How did you develop that? And what do you think readers take away from that?
Well, how I developed it is I started off with history, and I took all of the major events in history that are known, that are written. And an interesting fact is most of the history of Genghis Khan and the Mongolians was written by their enemies, which is sort of an interesting facet if you think about it. And because they didn't have the written word. And so the dynamic between Yasute and Genghis was that they were friends. And Yasute helped him out initially and began to work with him, and then grew and realized what he had done through some difficult times of his own, realized, what he was part of, he didn't want to be part of anymore. And so that's sort of the story behind Yasute, as he grows to regret his involvement because of the carnage that is ensued by Genghis and his groups.
It seems like that definitely seems like something that veterans can take something away from. You're a strong supporter of DAV, strong supporter of veterans. You volunteer. You're an entrepreneur yourself, and you volunteer to help entrepreneurs. Do you think that there are lessons for veterans, lessons for entrepreneurs that people can draw from the book?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lesson for our culture as a whole, right? That whole point that I made earlier about knowledge wielded without wisdom could be dangerous, and that's sort of the overarching theme that I think now, specifically to veterans, that's a tough one. I don't really, to me, being a veteran is, my family has been rooted in working in the military. My dad was a veteran. My son's a veteran. I'm a veteran. So, as far as, this book is primarily entertainment. And the story is about a group, a military group, if you will. So I guess, and then plus some of the storyline certainly goes into battles and so forth. So I certainly think there's a parallel there. But as far as message goes, it's more entertainment.
I thought the idea, there's kind of a moral injury that we're facing there that I think a lot of people could identify with. But you're talking about that. I thought it was it was educational. I thought the whole book was very
Thank
educational. But how do you balance that need to, hold on to readers, give them a really fun journey, but also, you know, deal with the deeper themes, purpose, identity, rites of passage. How do you do both of those things at the same
It's a balancing act, right? And then weaving it within the confines of the historical events that occurred. I mean, is sort of important because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to reinvent history so much. I really, and one of the things I did was I hired an editor that was a Mongolian historian, and he read through the book and gave me feedback and so forth on it. So actually, I believe he's connected with the University of London or Cambridge. So he's got a good background in history and specifically Mongolian history. And I thought that was important to have that as an integral part of the story, to have that feedback and to try to, and I tried to do my best to make the historical events current within the book. So the things that are happening are actually happening. Like for instance, in the second book, and that's the one I'm working on now, the city of Zhangdu is destroyed and over 1 million people are killed. And so that's one of his Genghis took over a number of cities and they were pretty brutal. And so, I've worked to have a balance between, the facts of the history and also, we don't want it to be a horror story, right? We want it to be entertaining. And so there's certainly a balance to strike there.
I know a lot of people around the shop who we've talked to have read the book. They feel like this is like a movie, or it's like 3 movies going on at one time.
I've had a number of people say that same thing. I think I've done my best to put it on paper, but I think in my mind, I see it as a movie too. It's just one of those things that I think it would lend itself well to being on the big screen.
Stunning visuals.
Yes.
What do you plan to do? I mean, what's your goal in creating the book? What do you hope that it accomplishes?
The big thing, obviously, is number one is to entertain. It's a historical fiction book, and it's entertainment. Number one. Number two, I would really like to get across that message that I was speaking to earlier with regards to knowledge and wisdom and how knowledge applied without wisdom can be dangerous. And I think we're living in that world today. And so I think there's a message there to speak to. And then thirdly, I'd like to be able to, if we can get the book to be successful, that or the series to be successful, that we could generate some revenue for veterans, and that all proceeds are going to be donated to veterans causes. I'm a big, I do a lot from a philanthropy point of view with regards to veterans. I do work with the DAV along with a number of other local agencies that work with veterans and homeless veterans and so forth. So it's probably it is a big cause that I'm championing, and would love to see the book be successful and generate dollars for helping vets.
That is so awesome. I think when veterans read this book, they're going to identify a lot with the journey, and people who have transitioned to civilian life and they've gone through big changes in their lives. I think they're going to see a lot there. Did you feel like you were connecting in some way with the symbolic elements in the story based on your experiences?
Well, it's funny too that you mentioned that change thing, because that's a big part of the storyline, right? Especially with the first book, because you've got this young man who's been raised in this one environment, in a royal palace, if you will, as part of the Jin Empire. And he leaves that environment and goes into a totally different environment, which is a massive change to him, of these illiterate nomads that basically live traveling from place to place. And so for my main character, change is an integral part of what he's going through here. And it's part of his growing up stage, if you will. And so that, I guess that change is something that we all go through, right? In some way, shape, or form. And certainly us in the military, we've gone through that time again where you're getting stationed from one place to the next, or a new job, or whatever the case may be. So change is an important aspect, and you have to be able to learn to deal with it. And that's one of the things that my main character does, is he learns to deal with it.
I know we ask you all the time to mentor entrepreneurs, and you do such a great job with it.
Thank you.
When you're looking, though, I mean, a lot of people, and I think it's a service. Anytime a veteran tells their story, well, not anytime, but most of the times when veterans tell their stories, it's a service to our community. And of course, entrepreneurs have another element of comparison between their military service and their transition to civilian life. Do you have any advice for people who want to write a book? I mean, your multi-decade rabbit hole has come up with something incredible. What do you tell someone else who wants to do the same thing?
I think that the first bit of advice would be to start writing. And my background is in engineering. I'm a systems engineer. I've worked at Johns Hopkins University for a number of years after the military. I worked there for 5 years, and then I started my own engineering firm. So I live a very structured approach to work, if you will, and my structured approach to writing a book was to come up with that outline and come up with a basic plot and theme and my main characters and all that. And I spent probably a lot more time researching than I have writing. I know I have, actually. I spent a lot more time researching than writing. And so, I guess if someone's going to write a book, one of the books I'd recommend you to read is, and there's a number of great books out there, but the one that I loved was Save the Cat. And it sounds an unusual name, Save the Cat. But there's a Save the Cat series on writing a book, and it's a fantastic book that helps people that have never written a book before really come up with the structure by which you would write a book, and how best to make sure that you're not just spending a lot of time writing stuff that won't be interesting, I guess, or would be a waste of time. So but I'm a firm believer in doing the research necessary to do it. But it's there's a lot of books out there too, so it's tough.
The book comes out in conjunction with Veterans Day.
It does.
Anything else you want to add?
No, we're excited about it, and we're excited about working with DAV. We really appreciate all your time that you've helped us with this book and getting the marketing out there. I mean, that's the big thing nowadays. I mean, since I'm self-published, and there's a lot of self-published books out there. It's tough going up against the big guys because everybody's looking for, you think about it, when you write a book, you're competing with everyone who's ever written a book before, from Hemingway on down, right? And everything in between. Because there's only so many hours a reader's going to read. There's so many hours in a day that a reader's going to read. So you're competing with all the great works out there. And so you need to bring your A game. And I've been fortunate enough to have a great team to work with, and DAV included. And I thank you guys very much for everything you've done to help me to promote this book. Thank
you so much. Discover this. Everyone, check it out. Comes out Veterans Day time frame, but sign up now to get alerts on the book, War of Fear, Eye of the Nomad, Umberto Nardolicci's captivating tale of courage, purpose, and redemption. You can find out more. Visit waroffear.com.
We're going to have it in Audible, and ebook, on Kindle, and also on Amazon, and under hardback, and then paperback. We're going to release the paperback sometime next year, but the hardback is going to be coming out on Veterans Day, along with the Audible and the ebook. So we're going to do Nook and Kindle, I believe. So we're excited about it.
Check it out, everybody, at waroffear.com. Nardo, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.